you still enjoy the video as lo-fi. Also, I think I'm a little bit sick, so if you hear that, I'm sorry. April, good night, good night, good night. Good night to you, April. I hope you have the sweetest, sweetest dreams. And you drift off quickly as possible. I'm actually very sleepy right now, so maybe my sleepy eyes will make you go to sleep too. Even more, even faster. Good night, Joshua. I hope everything's going well with you. Good night, good night, good night. I love you all so much. So much. Good night, Joshua. Good night, Joshua. Yes. This looks like Jonathan. Good night, Jonathan. Good night. You are so sweet, Jonathan. And kind. Good night, Jonathan. Brandon. I hope everything's going okay with you too, so you can have a relaxing night or day or nap. Brandon. Good night. Good night. Daniel. Good night, Daniel. Good night kisses for Daniel. Good night kisses for everybody. Everything's okay, my love. Everything's gonna be okay. Don't you worry. I'm here with you right now. So let's just relax. Good night, Christian. Good night. Kisses. Good night kisses for Christian. Kisses for Christian. Good night kisses for you, Christian. Good night kisses for Christian. Good night kisses for Christian. Jacob, I see you floating around. I'm gonna get you, and you're gonna go and get your rest. Alright? Once I kiss Jacob, you're gonna have to go to sleep now and get your rest, alright? You promise? Alright. Thank you. Kisses for Jacob. Good night, kisses for Jacob. Good night, kisses for Jacob. Next is George, deja vu. George, deja vu. George, deja vu. Good night, George. Thank you for being such a loyal subscriber, friend here on YouTube. Good night, George. Good night, George, deja vu. Good night kisses for George, deja vu. Good night, George. Good night, George. Good night, George, deja vu. Good night kisses for Volato. Next is Rafal. Good night kisses for you, Rafal. Good night kisses for you, Rafal. Sweet dreams. Sabrina. Sabrina. Sizzling. Sabrina. Good night, Sabrina. I hope everything's going well with you too. Good night. Good night kisses for Sabrina. It's gonna be okay, my love. It's gonna be okay. You don't have to be alone. We're all here. We're all here for each other. Good night kisses for Sabrina. Madison, how are you doing? Madison. Good night kisses for everybody. Good night kisses for Madison. Good night. I hope you have the sweetest dreams. Next we have Sosa. Good night. What a cool name. Why does it sound delicious? Is there something that sounds similar to Sosa? I'm sorry. I love you guys. Good so soft. I remember you, Pearl. Pearl. Good night, Pearl. Good night, Jet. Good night. Kisses for you, Pearl. Looks like you got a little something on your face right there. I can grab it for you. I think it's an eyelash. Got it. Make a wish. Okay. Good night. Good night. Good night. Kisses for Pearl. 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 Good night. Good night. Good night, my love. Wasn't sure if this name was Mikhail or Micah or Michael. I'm gonna go with Mikhail. Mikhail, good night, Mikhail. Good night, good night, good night, Mikhail, Mikhail. Good night, good night, good night. Good night, Mikhail. Mikhail. Good night, kisses for Mikhail. Good night, kisses for Mikhail. Oh, buddies, buddies, good night, good night, good night, buddies, buddies. Buddies, buddies, good night, kisses for you, my love. Good night, kisses for you, for you, for you, my love. Buddies, good night. Have a peaceful, peaceful sleep. I hope you have the most amazing dreams, buddies. Okay. Good night. I love you. Good night. Kisses for buddies. Ida. I love how active you are on the channel, Ida. It's so fun to talk to you. Ida. Good night. Kisses. Good night. Kisses. Good night. Kisses for Ida. I see. Kisses. Good night. Kisses for Ida. I see. Good night. Kisses for you, Ida. Good night. Good. Alexander. Good night, my love. Good night, Alexander. I hope this one's pronounced Ariton. Ariton. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry if I got that one wrong. Good night, Ariton. 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 Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night, Ariton. Good night. Kisses for Ariton. Sweet dreams, my love. Sweet dreams, all my loves. Ronnie, Ronnie, Ronnie. Good night, Ronnie. Good night. Good night. Kisses for Ronnie, Ronnie, Ronnie. Everything's gonna be okay, Ronnie. Everything's gonna be okay, Ronnie. Good night, Ronnie. Good night. What a cool name. Mojo. Good night, Mojo. Good night, Mojo. Good night, Mojo. I hope the conditions in your room are perfect to go to sleep. Or if by chance you're on a camping trip and you get to sleep out in the wilderness, that's cool. I hope the temperature's good for that, if that's what's going on. So awkward. Good night, Mojo. Good night, Mojo. Good night, Mojo. Good night, Mojo. Hunter, Hunter, Hunter. Hunter, good night, my love. Good night, my love. Good night, the good night. The good nightiest of the good night kisses. Hunter, 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 Hunter. Good night, Hunter. Good night. Good night. Matthew, Matthew, Matthew. Everything is going okay with you, Matthew. I hope you're spreading kindness, love, and positivity in the world, out into the world, because you lose it. Everything's gonna be okay, Matthew. Good night, good night, good night. It's okay to go to sleep. Okay to go to sleep, to get some good night kisses. Some good night kisses to go to sleep. Hurry, hurry. Good night, my love. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Sounds kind of like hurry. Hurry, hurry, hurry up and go to sleep. I love you. Please know that I'm just joking around. Come on, we're friends. We're friends, right? Okay, I love you. Hurry, good night, good night. I hope you get the good nightiest good night of them all. Good night kisses for Harry, Harry, Harry. Good night kisses for Harry, Harry, Harry. looks like the next name is Junaid. Good night. Relax, Junaid. Relax, Junaid. Good night kisses for Junaid. Good night kisses for Junaid. Good night, Junaid. Milana. Good night, Milana. Good night kisses for Milana. Let's get to those. Good night, Milana. Next, looks like we have Veil. I love talking to you in the comments too, Veil. It's so fun. Veil. Good night. Just gentle pats on your face, Veil. Gentle pats. Good night, my love. Good night. Kisses for Veil. Good night, Veil. Kitty. Good night. Good night. Good night kisses for Skinny. My favorite jokester in the comments, Nora. Oh my gosh, you're so goofy, Nora. Good night, Nora. Good night, kisses for Nora. Good night, kisses for Nora. Good night, Nora. You deserve the most restful, peaceful sleep ever. Good night. Right. Good night, kisses. Kisses for right. Good night, right. Sweet dreams. Looks like we have Dragony. Good night, kisses for Dragony. Good night, my love. That was kind of not in the right spot. Sweet dreams, everybody. I hope this video was relaxing to you. I really hope to see you at the next one.